A few years ago, Sadhguru was invited by a research institute to examine the gamma waves in his brain. Following this, he was fitted with 14 electrodes on his head and instructed to meditate. It was observed that the line representing the waves on the monitor started to become completely flat, indicating a straight line. According to the researchers, this phenomenon was only possible in the case of a dead individual, as a flat line on the monitor suggests no signs of any brain activity. Consequently, these researchers commented that Sadhguru should be declared brain dead. Surprisingly, if you're aware, declaring someone brain dead means considering them medically and legally dead. This incident proves that in modern science, what is considered as dead is not actually dead. Previously, according to the understanding of science, when breath and respiration ceased, it meant that the individual was dead. However, after some time, some people who had experienced the cessation of breath and respiration fully later revived and became alive again. Consequently, after this, just as per the scientific understanding, when heartbeats fully cease, some individuals are initially declared dead. But even after that, some people whose heartbeats fully stopped at one point later revived and became alive again. As a result, in reality, finding a precise answer as to when someone can be definitively labeled as dead becomes a challenge. Science then began to use various terminologies such as brain death, somatic death, etc., to mask its own failures in finding a proper answer. Therefore, the question that arises here is, when should a person be considered completely dead? According to the principles of Yoga Sutras, only when all 5 pranas or vital airs completely leave a person's body should they be considered fully dead. In my childhood, I often heard from my mother, "Don't your 5 pranas want it even once?" At that time, I used to wonder about my 5 pranas. Now I understand that those 5 pranas are samana vayu, prana vayu, udana vayu, apana vayu, and vyana vayu. According to the Yoga Sutras, as soon as breath and respiration cease, gradually, one by one, the 5 pranas leave the body. Firstly, within 21 to 24 minutes after the cessation of breath and respiration, samana vayu leaves the body. Samana vayu controls the body's temperature regulation. Therefore, after the cessation of breath and respiration, the body becomes cold like ice due to samana vayu's departure. Secondly, within 48 to 90 minutes after the cessation of breath and respiration, prana vayu leaves the body. Prana vayu controls the heartbeat and the process of thinking. Therefore, after the cessation of breath and respiration, one should wait for at least 90 minutes before performing the last rites. You may have seen that in ancient times, the bodies of deceased individuals were laid out on open ground. This was because as long as prana vayu remains in the body, if the body remains in contact with the earth and the panchabhutas, the possibility of revival persists. Thirdly, within 6 to 12 hours after the cessation of breath and respiration, udana vayu leaves the body. Udana vayu controls the buoyancy of the body. Hence, when udana vayu departs, the body initially feels heavy when an attempt is made to lift it, even though its weight does not actually increase. It is due to the absence of buoyancy caused by the departure of udana vayu. Fourthly, within 8 to 18 hours after the cessation of breath and respiration, apana vayu leaves the body. Apana vayu controls the sensations in the body. That's why it is often observed that even after a long time has passed since the cessation of breath and respiration, suddenly the body starts to twitch on its own. Because as long as apana vayu is not completely departed from the body, even though its presence is minimal, it continues to generate sensations in the body. Fifthly, if death occurs due to natural causes, then within 11 to 14 days, and if due to an accident or injury, then within 48 to 90 days, vyana vayu leaves the body. During this time, someone can only help the soul in its subsequent journey. This opportunity is harnessed through various ritual practices in Indian culture. The term for the union of the body and the prana is called birth, and just as birth gradually takes its time, the term for the separation of the body and the prana is death, which also gradually takes its time. When someone's breath and respiration cease, and their body no longer responds to any external stimuli, a regular person might declare them dead. However, a doctor doesn't necessarily accept that. This is because a doctor possesses subtle tools and methods with which they might potentially revive a person even after their breath and respiration have ceased. But once the separation between the body and the prana has crossed a certain limit, even a doctor cannot bring the prana back into the body. At that point, even a doctor might declare that person as dead. However, a well-versed yogi or tantric doesn't necessarily accept that. This is because they have even more subtle methods through which they might potentially revive a person even after the breath and respiration have ceased. But once the separation between the body and the prana has crossed a certain limit, even a well-versed yogi or tantric cannot bring the prana back into the body. At that point, they can only assist the prana in its subsequent journey. Therefore, the answer to the question, when is it appropriate to definitively label a person as dead, depends on the purpose for which the declaration is being made, and the ability of the declarer to establish communication with that prana or the soul. This is why in medical terms, someone is never diagnosed as dead, but rather declared as dead. I have learned about this topic from Sadhguru's book, Death. If you want to delve deeper into this matter, I highly recommend purchasing and reading this book by clicking on the link provided below. More wisdom, more solution, better life.